everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Just Mets podcast. My name is Andrew Claudio, and I guess it's time for a bit of a programming note. Full behind the scenes. When I came aboard to the Just Mets team, it's something I'm enjoying doing very much at the moment. And I was talking to Rich about content options and how potentially to incorporate Mets therapy into the mix. I will start by, just for those who don't know what Mets therapy is, other than the thing that all of us need by following this baseball team, I decided a few years ago, first it was a full-length podcast, then it was it became a shorts series that I had thoughts after every Mets game, and that for every time the Mets play a baseball game or news drops or a breaking news reaction is required, whether it be on TikTok or on Instagram or YouTube Shorts or I guess Twitter and all the other social media apps, I just record a quick reaction into my phone. Not a high production value thing. Shout out to my skills as an editor to make it as good quality as possible. But the premise behind it is that when something happens, we talk about how we feel and how justified those feelings are potentially, and whether they're worth reacting or overreacting to, whether it's that one loss in April or that one win in June. And little did we know that the one losses that you're not supposed to overreact to in April were absolutely something were going to matter at the end of the season last year. So I had talked to Rich to bring the fully back around about a way to do Mets therapy a bit longer, because even more behind the scenes, just some notes about the tricks of the trade. All of the shorts that I do for Mets therapy are 3 minutes or less. And while it's an algorithm based rule for TikTok and Instagram, it's just a rule for YouTube. If anything is more than 3 minutes, they don't even acknowledge it as a short. Like, this isn't short. We're making it a full YouTube video. So while I'm restricted to 3 minutes and that's it for the shorts, the Mets therapy shorts, is there a path to a full-length session? And so Rich and I said, if there's ever like a heavy news day or a heavy headline day for the Mets, and it's not like our time to record, which is Sunday nights, or if we're not doing the Patreon pod, or as I've deemed it, the coffee show, if Rich isn't about to do off-season coffee, how could I potentially do a full-length Mets therapy session? So the thought is, if it's a heavy news day during the offseason and it's worthy of a Mets therapy full-length session, I will upload a video with my thoughts reacting to a full day's worth of headlines. I thought about it last week when it seemed as if there was a Passan report here, a Nightingale report here, a John Heyman report here, a Will Salmon report there. And lo and behold, the rule, Rich and I said that he was on board. Let's do it. And we said, next time there's a newsworthy thing, just do a session. These things will be like 20 to 25 minutes. And lo and behold, Jeff Passan decided in one article alone to give me something to do a full Mets therapy session. So I'll start here. If you're looking for my reaction to Frankie Montas being DFA'd, I have already recorded a Mets therapy short. Again, 3 minutes or less. That is out there. If you'd like to also read about from Michael Behrens in the newsletter, his reaction to the Frankie Montas DFA, that is available for you to check out in the Just Mets Substack. Please check it out. Sign up if you'd like to. In this Mets therapy full-length session, we're just going to go through the Jeff Passan article. I went and found all the different mentions of the word Mets. And for those who don't know, Jeff Passan for ESPN put out an off-season preview, covered the entire league and just like what he's heard at winter meetings. And it's very lengthy, it's very detailed, it's very insightful, and it mentions the Mets a lot. In fact, 15 different times the New York Mets are mentioned. And I'm just going to go not in order. I went in order of importance, not in order of when they're mentioned, because I decided to do that for you Mets fans. But as we now dive into Jeff Passan's preview, which was enough insight to do a full Mets therapy session, I'm just going to go through one by one the times the Mets are mentioned. We'll start with what he said about Pete Alonso. And I promise this whole thing won't be just me reading, but it will involve some reading, I promise you. What he says about Pete Alonso: Alonso's willingness to play designated hitter offers the sorts of avenues a first base only mindset wouldn't. He could stay with the Mets, move up to Boston, bring Cincinnati the big bat it desperately needs, or if Ryan Mountcastle is traded or non-tendered, split the first base and DH jobs in Baltimore with rookie Samuel Basallo, who will also spend plenty of time at catcher. My thoughts on this: I don't think this is anything we didn't already know. John Heyman mentioned the Baltimore option. There's also like Chris Cotillo out of Boston said that there's growing sentiment within the Red Sox organization that they prefer Pete Alonso to Kyle Schwarber, who they let go 3 years ago and are regretful of letting him go, I guess 3 or 4 years ago. But even more so that Pete Alonso is more of a backup option if they lose Alex Bregman, which does tell me that Pete Alonso, if Bregman goes back to the Red Sox, won't have the Red Sox to turn to and might actually have his home, the New York Mets, to potentially turn to and say this is where would be best for me to go. So that's what I'm thinking about Pete Alonso, my reaction to what Passan said here. This is the first mention of the New York Mets. Next, let's talk about Edwin, Diaz, Devin Williams, and closers. I think I spelled Devin Williams correctly, by the way. I think, yes, Devin. So this is 3 paragraphs long. I'll just start it one at a time. It starts with Edwin Diaz. He's talking about the market for closers. It starts with Edwin Diaz, arguably the best in the game at 31. He might not get a repeat of the 5-year, $102 million deal he opted out of after the 3rd season, but should wind up with at least a 4-year, $80 million contract, even when saddled with a qualifying offer. The Mets want him back, but they might not want him back as much as other teams or players. So I said the thing the other day when talking to Rich about it scares me that there is like when you look at certain contexts, like the last out of the World Series has not been recorded by the team's opening day closer much in the last 15 years. It's only twice in the last 15 years that's happened. And it scares me that David Stearns will use that and just that kind of principle about how it's not about having a closer, it's about having dependable arms come October. And it's a very Moneyball thinking that you don't just get like pay one arm a lot of money and it's the last 3 outs of the game that you need to spread it out amongst your bullpen. And I just fully disagree with that. Having a closer solidifies victories, and it doesn't mean you just don't have a good bullpen, as David Stearns proved at the deadline. You need to go out and get a good bullpen, even if the moves don't work out. Let's move on. Oh, so the last part of this that I found intriguing was that he doesn't think that Passan said he might not get a repeat of his 5-year 102. I know Will Salmon already reported that Diaz is seeking a 9-figure contract. I think this has more to do about the years that I'm assuming my read on this is Jeff Passan is hearing or has read the landscape of the market and said that Edwin Diaz is probably a 4-year contract. And if that's so, and it's 4 for $80, David Stearns, that's not an expensive contract to give to Edwin Diaz. I would think that he would want a 5th year to get him over the Josh Hader contract, which was 5 for $95, I believe, 5 for $92. I forget what the exact number is, but whatever it is, if 4 for $80 is what gets it done and it's on a different team, that'll be very disappointing, especially if the other option, as we keep reading, is Devin Williams. Jeff Passan continues. New York is in on Devin Williams, whose connections to those in the Mets organization, including President of Operations David Stearns, date to their time together with the Brewers. Williams is coming off the worst season of his career with the Yankees, but his peripheral numbers were excellent, and his stuff still graded out well above average. Williams has suitors from coast to coast, though the Mets are mulling the opportunity to sign Diaz and Williams to head up the bullpen in need of total restructuring. I will say, I like that last part. If it's Diaz and Devin Williams, I'm in favor of Devin Williams coming to the Mets on a 1 year, like a 1+1, so he can go test free agency off a better season next year. Like Passan said, his numbers were very bad. Just ask a Yankee fan about the Devin Williams experience last year in New York. He was better, I will say, after he finally stopped being the closer of the team. So if it ends up being the plan is Devin Williams plus Edwin Diaz, I don't hate it. It can't be instead of Edwin Diaz. It can't be we'll sign my old closer because we lost Edwin Diaz and look, we're back. No, it's just not good enough. And then we go to the last note on this. One closer who won't be returning to the Mets is Ryan Helsley. Though his implosion in New York after the trade deadline hasn't hindered his market. Helsley is the perfect example of the modern adage: do not tell me what you did, tell me what you're projected to do. I don't actually care about the rest of this. The more interesting thing is about what happened with the first two paragraphs. Ryan Helsley, that was not what we expected from you. He started to figure it out after he realized he was tipping pitches. I believe his last 6 or 7 outings were all scoreless with the Mets. Go play in Kansas City or wherever for a year, boost your value, get traded to a contender, go be a free agent next winter and get the contract that you wanted. Because what the main point of this is that he very much tanked his value with the Mets and is in need of some rehabilitation. My takeaway from this is that Edwin Diaz could be had for 4 years, and that the Mets are considering bringing Edwin Diaz and Devin Williams as the back end of their bullpen option next year, which I don't think is a bad back end. It cannot be one or the other. There's only one. If it's one or the other, and it's Edwin Diaz. I should say that. It can't be, if not Diaz, then Devin Williams, and we're good. No, then you have even more work to do if that's your closer plan for next year. Next mention of the Mets. He said just flatly, the Mets are blowing it up. The Mets are blowing up plenty. And this is probably the thing that caught a lot of Mets fans' attention. It's not just Luis Angel Acuna or Mark Vientos or Brett Beatty. Center fielder Brandon Nimmo, which I will just add, Jeff Passan hasn't been a center fielder in 2 years, who has a full no trade protection, and utility man Jeff McNeil can also be had. I think we've all speculated Jeff McNeil could potentially be had. Jeff McNeil, as I go to Spot Track to try and pull up his numbers, but Jeff McNeil, it's a 1+1, I believe. And I even think the last part of it is a team option. I'll pull it up now. Look, the big takeaway from, I think, a lot of Mets fans here is that Brandon Nimmo is on this list. And Brandon Nimmo is at $20 million for the next 5 years. I believe he signed an 8-year contract with the Mets. He just finished year 3. He's a full no trade clause. And it's not just because it was in his contract. He's also a 10-5 guy. Whenever you play 10 years with a team, 10 years in the sport, 5 of them with one team, you get an automatic no trade clause. And Brandon Nimmo has that. So I respect to my buddy Rich McLeod, who put out there, if they could trade Nimmo, then they have options and possibilities, which I agree. If you find a way to trade Brandon Nimmo, you have options. You might get into the Kyle Tucker sweepstakes. You might get into another outfield sweepstakes. Maybe you consider moving Juan Soto to left field and potentially playing a shorter outfield spot for him to potentially guard. Look, the reason I'm not even going to go there just yet is because the guy has a no trade clause. Like the example I used in texting Rich about this, if I want to move from my apartment, right, but I have a lease and my landlord's like, I'm not letting you out of your lease, then I'm not technically looking for a new apartment. I'm not there's no point. I am locked in. It's not up to me. And there's so many other examples. I think I botched that analogy, to be honest. So I got to get the exact analogy I used to Rich. You're going to find this out live. What I said to Rich. Okay. The exact text I sent Rich. So the variable that matters the most to me is that Brandon Nimmo has a no trade clause. I need to know if like Nimmo also wants out. Have they talked to him about potentially him out? Does he have a certain number of places he wants to go? Like, this is so much more than him being like he could be had. Does that mean that the Mets are floating this out there? Has we talked to Brandon Nimmo? Look, I'm not even fully going to acknowledge the speculation, but about Nimmo's politics and like what has happened in New York City over the past couple of weeks and who's in charge now and how that could affect the Nimmos. I don't think we know Brandon Nimmo has acknowledged that. I think that's not fair speculation to make. And I also think Brandon Nimmo lives on Long Island, so who cares about who's the mayor of New York City? I think the fact that Brandon Nimmo's in this mentioning is intriguing. So many other dominoes then have to fall. And the exact analogy is, I can want to move from my place, but if I have a lease that my landlord won't let me out of, I'm not technically looking for a new apartment. I just want to move. The Mets can technically want to trade Brandon Nimmo, but if he doesn't want to move and wants to be with the Mets and wants to use no trade clause, he's not available. So I am very curious. Oh, that's actually news. Breaking news live. Brandon Woodruff accepting the qualifying offer with the Milwaukee Brewers. So he will return to Milwaukee on a 1-year, $22 million contract. That is news. We had mentioned him as a potential option. He was going to come up later in this session. The other names on here, Brett Beatty is an interesting name. I would assume that's in the right deal, which is why I'd also assume Mark Vientos can be had in the right deal. But Mark Vientos and Luis Angel Acuna were available at the deadline, so we're not surprised there. Jeff McNeil, just to close the loop, has a $12 million contract, or is under contract for 12 years. It's 12 to the luxury tax. 15.7 with a club option, again for 15.7 in 2027. So that's where things stand on the Mets potentially blowing it up. Kodai Senga, which I guess falls under that as well. This is another 2 mentions of the Mets. He is extremely available, and multiple executives expect him to be traded this winter as the Mets look to overhaul their rotation. Yeah, this is what I asked when we talked about an ace. Like, if you're adding an ace or another arm to the rotation to put him at the front, you still technically have 5 guys under contract if you're including Nolan McLean to the mix. Like, if you had the scenario of Tarik Skubal, right? You then would have to find a home for one of Manaea, Senga, David Peterson, Clay Holmes, like whoever. And then Nolan McLean, unless you're planning on going to a 6-man rotation or using 2 of these guys as an opener on the same day, you needed to find a home for another one. And it seems as if the Mets are, as Rich has said, he's extremely available. The funny part, shout out to my buddy John Macri over at Knicks Film School. Extremely available is an interesting way to phrase it. It's like that movie. The movie A Few Good Men, the Aaron Sorkin script, the Tom Cruise, Jack Nicholson, Demi Moore. Demi Moore in that movie stands up at one point and says, "I object," and the judge says overruled, and she responds, "I strenuously object," and it's like it's that adjective on top of the adverb on top of object doesn't mean the objection matters anymore. So it's not just he's available, he's extremely available. Macri made that connection to me in a text earlier when we were talking about how Twitter was down this morning, and I said Twitter is very down in some of the tests I was running. It's like, that's funny. I would be shocked if Kodai Senga is a New York Met on opening day. I think they'll find a home for him and then look to find a home for someone else to fill his spot in the rotation, which brings us to the next mention, which is Tarik Skubal. Whatever the decision, which is not easy, according to Jeff Passan. Again, this is talking about whether the Tigers want to trade him or not, and the decision to decide to trade him or not. Only a handful of teams have the prospect depth and urgency to pull off such a deal. The Dodgers clearly fall into that category, though their rotation is so good already that they're focusing their energy on outfielders and relievers. And then he mentions the Mets would be perfect, particularly seeing as owner Steve Cohen wouldn't blink at giving out the largest contract to a pitcher ever. It's exactly what we talked about last week, what I talked about with Chris Castellani last week on the Patreon pod. The Mets are the perfect fit if he becomes available. It is just unsure, and the Tigers don't seem to be sure, and Jeff Passan doesn't seem to be sure that he's even available. So that's really where we thought things stood, and it's where things currently stand right now. As far as other pitchers are concerned, Framber, Valdez, Dylan Cease, and Tatsuya Imai. The Mets, Cubs, Red Sox, Orioles, and Blue Jays are all playing in the top of the market sandbox, with the Angels, Astros, A's, Giants, and others lurking. A hefty payday awaits all three. A lot of people want pitching. Nothing specific about the Mets. I think it should just be very clear that as far as these three are concerned, the Mets will be very in on all three as options. I maintain that the numbers on Imai are very impressive overseas, and it's not that I would want one over the other, but if where this lands is Tarik Skubal doesn't get traded and the Mets walk away with Tatsuya Imai and they trade Kodai Senga and they're able to keep their prospects, I would be fine with that reality personally. Next up, speaking of Japan, Munetaka Murakami and Kazuma Okamoto. I hope I said those correctly. These are two, I believe both are first basemen. One might be a third baseman, but both are sluggers from Japan. And Jeff Passan mentions these are both first basemen. Among those targeting first basemen, the Mets, Red Sox, Diamondbacks, Texas Rangers, and yes, even the Pirates. The real big takeaway from the article, the preview that Jeff Passan put, is that he's really trying to stress the Pirates are trying to spend. I don't know if he had a conversation with the GM in Pittsburgh and he just wants to make clear, hey, I'm actually going to spend this offseason. In the words of Kerry Washington in Scandal, you want me, earn me. You want my trust, earn it. I'll believe you spend when you spend it, Mr. Charrington. So I want Pete Alonso over both of these. I'll explore both of these options if Pete Alonso goes to Boston. Pete Alonso first and foremost. But good to know the Mets will be in on just about anybody. Speaking of Kyle Schwarber. So hold on a second. Because of his production and leadership skills, Schwarber fits just about anywhere. The Boston Red Sox are still kicking themselves for letting him go after 2021. The New York Mets stealing him from Philadelphia would be a coup. And then mentions like the Blue Jays want a left-handed bat to complement Guerrero. The Reds would be in 40 minutes south of where Schwarber grew up. The Tigers need some thump in their lineup. Just mentions other options. I did find it fascinating that the Mets got mentioned in this. I don't know if it was just naming possibilities, not actually teams that he's heard are interested in Kyle Schwarber. I've mentioned that I think the Mets are already too left-handed. Maybe trading Brandon Nimmo changes that, but a lineup that already has Juan Soto, Brandon Nimmo, and Brett Baty currently on the roster, and I'm penciling in Brett Baty as everyday at bats for 2026. I would be shocked if Kyle Schwarber ended up with the Mets. I think if they're going to dole out big money to a DH, it'll be Pete Alonso, and who will play first and DH. Yeah, I'd be shocked personally. So yeah, that's where that stands. Kyle Tucker, I mean, he mentioned the Mets. Kyle Tucker's desire to win. Look, this is a Dodgers bullet point, but he also, Jeff Passan mentions Tucker's desire to win, though, will be a guiding principle despite the New York Yankees, keeping the New York Yankees and Mets, despite their presence of their MVP caliber right fielders, Aaron Judge and Juan Soto, in the mix for the time being. Again, Mets therapy, right? I read this sentence, and this is a note from an agent just to say, let's keep the two biggest markets involved in negotiations outside of the Dodgers, obviously, so the price continues to stay high. Kyle Tucker is going to get a lot of money this offseason. I don't think it'll be from the New York Mets. Some couple quick hitters here. Bo Bichette, I believe this might be the last one. No, two more. Bo Bichette, I was intrigued by the Mets mention here. Bo Bichette, the youngest free agent domestically to hit on the market. talk in the article, Jeff Passan mentioned how he was injured during the playoffs, but came back to play second base in the World Series and looked serviceable and had a great World Series at the plate. Bichette, the Mets aren't inclined to replace Francisco Lindor at shortstop, but do have room to improve at second and third, as do the Phillies. Yeah, that if I'm Bichette, I'm very much putting out there I could play second or third base. That would intrigue me. You trade Jeff McNeil, you get in on the Bichette sweepstakes. That's, I think, going to be an option if they lose Pete Alonso, because you're going to have to replace his bat somehow. And if you're signing a more defensively inclined first baseman, but you're adding Bichette, Cody Bellinger, like going out and finding other options, it's just another way to do so. So, yeah, that's my read on the Mets getting mentioned in Bichette. I would welcome a Bichette reunion. And finally, these other 4 bullet points that don't mention the Mets directly, but I think do affect the Mets directly. And one is already, the Brandon Woodruff thing I didn't include, so I knew what I was doing. I actually, apparently Jeff Passan was ahead of this. So let's read. Tyler Rogers, let's start here. Mets right-hander. They got traded to the Mets at the deadline. He's one of the softest throwers in MLB, and it doesn't matter. He just gets outs. My thought on Tyler Rogers has been, I only want him back if he's replacing Ryan Stanek. I don't want him to be your 8th inning guy. He's your bulk innings eater, your middle reliever. I don't want him coming in with guys on because he doesn't strike people out. He is an out-getter for sure. I need him starting clean innings. And the concept of what Stanek was supposed to be is what I want them to use Tyler Rogers as. He's your third righty, your 4th option in the pen. A good option, don't get me wrong, but he's not the guy you bring in when you need a strikeout, when you need an out. Have him in to start innings and have your flamethrowers ready in case the soft contact or the BABIP bad luck that we saw a lot down there, the stretch of their collapse, ends up biting you. So would welcome a Tyler Rogers reunion. He cannot be your next up to your closer. Freddie Peralta, if Brandon Woodruff accepts a qualifying offer, it drastically increases the chances of a Peralta trade. Interesting. If Woodruff hits free agency, Peralta almost certainly will stay. So look, we're live on the air as this happens. He accepted the qualifying offer, Brandon Woodruff, which means that Freddie Peralta, and I'm on the spot track for the Milwaukee Brewers now. Freddie Peralta, 1 year, $8 million. Why? I got to be honest with you. It's negligence that he could potentially become available. 1 year, $8 million, best team in baseball. And he could become available this offseason. Team had the best record in baseball. It's crazy. I know he has a big payday coming. Get the draft pick, man. Don't do that to your fan base. I would be in on Freddie Peralta if the Mets could potentially get him. I have no idea what the contract or the trade would even look like, whether it be 1-to-1, if the Mets would have to give up a prospect, maybe eat some salary in a deal to make it even. But Freddie Peralta last season, again, it blows my mind that this guy's available. Freddie Peralta last season went 17-6 with a 2.70 ERA and a 5.6 WAR in 33 starts, 200 strikeouts and 176 innings. Yeah, that's not someone who should become available. But as Jeff Passan says, it increases the chances of a Peralta trade. I would be in on that if I were the Mets. Let's see if that happens. Hunter Green for the Reds. Rich and I talked about this. A minuscule chance he moves, not quite Skeens, but pretty close. That's how I kind of read the Hunter Green stuff. But yeah, so Hunter Green is not available. And then some other arms that are available that potentially could become available that we talked about, Sandy Alcantara and Edward Cabrera in Miami, with Thomas White and Robbie Snelling on the come. The Marlins soon could have a rotation surplus. They need bats, and dealing either would satisfy that need. Fine. Sandy Alcantara for Mark Vientos. Sign me up. We'll eat the contract since you're cash poor, which I don't know if you guys have ever looked at the Marlins finances. I know it's just been like assumed the Marlins finances are bad, and like it's why they're always like one of those teams that's looking to sell. But just to fully crystallize it, I'm staring at the Marlins spot track as we speak, and they have one player making more than $4 million, and it's Sandy Alcantara, who's making 17 this year with a club option for $21 million next year. That's it. It's the only player making more than that much. Like, what are we doing here? This is why we're going to a lockout. It's because these teams won't spend, not because the other teams will. Plain and simple. I would welcome Sandy Alcantara, but not as an ace, but as like a number two. I would think they only get involved in the Alcantara Cabrera sweepstakes if Manaea or Peterson, which I'll note in the Mets are blowing it up note that Passan made. He didn't say anything about either of them, didn't say anything about anybody else in the Mets rotation other than Kodai Senga. So the Mets aren't seemingly putting it out there to the most informed of insiders that anybody else in the rotation could be had other than Kodai Senga. So my takeaway from all of this is the Mets are about to have a very busy offseason and will look very different on opening day 2026, which is scary, but I think it's also intriguing that we could have a very busy offseason, both as Mets fans and right here at Just Mets. My thanks to all of you that tuned in to check out this Mets therapy session. I hope I provided the context necessary and helped you. I went a little longer than I expected. In the future, I won't do a 12-slide presentation. Jeff Passan, very good reporter, put a lot in here that was worth reacting to. So if you want, let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'll interact there as well if you're watching on YouTube. And of course, if you're listening on iTunes or Spotify, please leave a 5-star rating and a review. Really helps with the show. I'll be back with Rich on Sunday unless some actual news happens. Please check out the Just Mets Patreon so that way you can hear Rich's next episode, Patreon exclusive bonus episode, which will come out on Thursday morning. I believe he's having a reporter on. Good time to do so with the amount of news that could be coming our way in the not too distant future. But until next time, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Let's go Mets. And I will speak with you soon. Peace.